Welcome back to Void of Fears, where the line between nightmares and reality blurs with every story. Our community grows stronger with each brave soul who joins us. We're 8,000 deep now, creeping toward our goal of 10,000 subscribers by year's end. If you dare to continue this journey with us, hit that subscribe button now. Leave your mark with a like. Share your own encounters in the comments below. Now, let's begin today's story. The darkness up here is different. That's what I tell people when they ask why I chose to spend 3 years of my life at the Fairbanks Northern Observatory. Up in Alaska, during the winter months, darkness isn't just the absence of light. It's a presence all its own. It wraps around the observatory like a living thing, pressing against the windows, seeping through the cracks. Most people can't handle it. But for an astronomy graduate student like me, this darkness is a gift. My name is Alex Mercer. 6 months ago, I arrived at this remote facility with nothing but my research equipment and an enthusiasm for astronomical anomalies that my professors back at MIT had called concerning during my final evaluation. Their concern didn't matter anymore. Dr. Eleanor Wilson, the director of this facility, had specifically requested me after reading my thesis on transient lunar phenomena. "Your unconventional thinking is exactly what we need up here," she'd written in her email. "Sometimes the most important discoveries come from those willing to look where others won't." I didn't know then how prophetic those words would become. The observatory sits perched on a ridge overlooking miles of pristine wilderness. It's a striking building, a central dome flanked by 2 smaller observation platforms, all connected to a residential wing that houses the small team that keeps this place running. Besides Dr. Wilson, there's Miguel Reyes, our technical genius, who can fix anything with duct tape and sheer willpower, and Kira Nakamura, a brilliant astrophysicist whose specialty in spectral analysis perfectly complements my focus on anomalies. The isolation got to me at first. The nearest town, if you could call it that, was a 2-hour snowmobile ride away. Little more than a general store, a medical clinic, and a handful of houses clustered together against the vastness of the Alaskan wilderness. Our internet connection was tenuous at best, completely absent at worst, especially during the frequent storms that rolled through the valley. But eventually I found comfort in the routine, in the silent camaraderie that formed between 4 people, with nowhere else to go and nothing to do but look up at the stars. Miguel taught me how to play chess, though I never managed to beat him. Kira shared a collection of old science fiction novels, dog-eared paperbacks that had survived dozens of remote postings, and Dr. Wilson, stern but fair, pushed me to refine my research methodology, to question my assumptions about what was possible. For the first few months, life fell into a comfortable rhythm. During the day, we processed data, maintained equipment, and tried not to get on each other's nerves in our confined quarters. At night, we took turns at the telescopes documenting stellar phenomena and contributing to various research projects, but everything changed on January 15th. I was alone in the main observatory dome that night. Dr. Wilson had come down with a nasty flu, Miguel was doing maintenance on the eastern platform, and Kira had taken the snowmobile into town for our monthly supply run. The aurora was particularly active, shimmering curtains of green and purple dancing across the sky. I'd seen dozens of auroras since arriving, but something about this one felt different. The pattern seemed almost deliberate. I was tracking the movement when I first noticed it, a dark spot amidst the glow, perfectly circular, about the size of a dime held at arm's length. At first, I thought it might be an equipment malfunction, or perhaps something on the dome itself. I adjusted the telescope and zoomed in on the anomaly. The spot wasn't just dark, it seemed to absorb the light around it. Even the stars behind it were completely invisible, as if that section of sky had been cut out and replaced with something that light couldn't penetrate or escape from. I immediately began documenting everything, taking spectral readings and photographs, while keeping detailed notes. The anomaly remained stationary, relative to the Earth's rotation, which meant it wasn't a stellar body. It was something else entirely. When I pointed our main spectroscope at it, the readings went haywire. The equipment shut down completely, requiring a full system restart. This happened 3 more times before I gave up on using our more sensitive instruments. I switched to older equipment, an analog camera attached to our secondary telescope, and managed to capture several images. Even through this basic setup, there was something unsettling about the anomaly. The photographs showed a perfect circle of nothingness, with a faint distortion around its edges, as if light itself was being bent inward. Time seemed to slip away as I worked. When I finally checked my watch, I was shocked to discover that 6 hours had passed. My back ached from hunching over the telescope, and my eyes burned from the strain. But I couldn't tear myself away. There was something mesmerizing about that perfect circle of darkness, something that called to me on a level I couldn't articulate. It wasn't until the first hint of dawn began to lighten the eastern sky that I finally packed up my equipment. The anomaly faded as the aurora diminished, eventually becoming invisible against the brightening sky. By morning, the anomaly had vanished, but I was electric with excitement. I burst into the common room where Dr. Wilson was nursing a cup of tea, her nose red from her cold. "I need to show you something," I said, spreading my notes across the table. I explained what I'd seen, showing her the photographs I managed to take. She studied them with narrowed eyes. Interesting. Could be a camera artifact, or perhaps a weather phenomenon. It wasn't either of those things, I insisted. It was stationary, relative to Earth's rotation, but didn't move with the aurora. And look at how it absorbed all light. Dr. Wilson pushed the photos back toward me. "Keep observing. If it appears again, call me immediately, no matter the hour." Her dismissive tone frustrated me, but I understood her caution. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and what I had so far was intriguing, but hardly conclusive. I spent the day reviewing my notes and preparing for the coming night. I cleaned the lenses of our older telescopes, calibrated the manual tracking systems, and set up a time-lapse camera that wouldn't require any electronic components that might malfunction. Kira returned from town late that afternoon, the snowmobile loaded with supplies. She found me in the equipment room calibrating an old spectrograph. "You look like a kid on Christmas morning," she said, leaning against the doorframe. "Found something interesting?" I hesitated, remembering Dr. Wilson's reserved response. But Kira wasn't Dr. Wilson. She was my peer, my friend, someone who might be more open to the excitement of discovery, before the caution of scientific skepticism. "Maybe," I said. "I'm not sure yet, but if I see it again tonight, I'll let you know." That night, I was back at the telescope before sunset, waiting. Hours passed with nothing unusual. Just when I was beginning to think I'd imagined it all, I saw it again. The same dark circle, in exactly the same position, only this time it was slightly larger. I called Dr. Wilson, who arrived within minutes, wrapped in her heavy parka. She observed the anomaly for a long time without speaking. "Have you shown this to Kira or Miguel?" she finally asked. "Not yet. I wanted your opinion first." She nodded slowly. "Let's keep this between us for now. Continue your observations, but don't discuss it with the others yet." Her reaction puzzled me, but I agreed. Over the next week, I observed the anomaly every night. It continued to grow incrementally larger. All attempts to capture it with our advanced equipment failed. Systems would crash, data would corrupt, and in one particularly strange incident, a brand new digital camera simply melted inside. Sleep became a distant memory as I devoted myself to studying the phenomenon. When I did manage to close my eyes, my dreams were filled with that perfect circle of darkness, expanding until it swallowed everything. The lack of sleep began to affect me. I became irritable, snapping at Miguel when he asked innocent questions about my research. I avoided meals with the others, preferring to eat quickly before returning to my observations. Kira noticed the change, of course. She cornered me one afternoon in the hallway. "You look terrible," she said bluntly. "What's going on?" "Nothing," I lied. "Just engrossed in a new project." "Must be fascinating to have you looking like a zombie. You know you can talk to me, right? Whatever it is." Her concern touched me, and for a moment I almost told her everything. But something held me back. A strange, possessive feeling about the anomaly. It was mine, my discovery, and sharing it felt somehow wrong. "I'm fine," I insisted, "just not sleeping well. The winter darkness gets to everyone, eventually." She didn't believe me. I could see it in her eyes, but she let it go for now. On the 8th night, something changed. I was alone again, staring at the anomaly through our oldest telescope, a manual reflector from the 1960s that seemed to be the only instrument capable of viewing the phenomenon without malfunctioning. When I heard it, a soft static coming from the radio in the corner of the dome. We kept the radio tuned to the emergency frequency, but it rarely picked up anything this far from civilization. The static grew louder, forming patterns that almost resembled speech. I recorded it on my phone and spent hours analysing the audio. Buried within the noise were words, fragments barely audible, but definitely there. Gateway opening. "We've been waiting, coming through." I played it for Dr. Wilson the next morning. She listened with an unreadable expression before handing me back my phone. "Interference from military communications, most likely," she said. "They have several bases north of here." But I could tell she didn't believe that. There was something in her eyes, not fear exactly, but caution. "I think there's more to this than you're telling me," I said. "Have you seen something like this before?" She sighed, suddenly looking every bit her age. "Not personally, no, but there are records, historical observations that might be relevant." "Where? I want to see them." "In time," she said, standing up to leave. "For now, continue your observations. But Alex, be careful, some knowledge comes at a cost." Her cryptic warning only intensified my curiosity. What did she know that she wasn't sharing? That afternoon, I found myself drawn to the observatory's small library. Tucked away on a bottom shelf was a dusty folder labelled Anomalous Phenomena, 1977. Inside were handwritten observation logs from a researcher named Thomas Jennings, describing what appeared to be the same dark spot I'd been observing. His notes became increasingly erratic over time, with the final entry simply reading, "It's opening." According to a newspaper clipping tucked into the folder, Jennings disappeared during a blizzard. His body never recovered. I should have been frightened, but instead I felt a surge of validation. Whatever this phenomenon was, it was real, it was recurring, and now I had proof. I delved deeper into the archives, finding scattered references to similar observations dating back to the founding of the observatory in the late 1800s. Every occurrence followed the same pattern, a dark spot appearing during periods of intense aurora activity, growing larger over time, and culminating in strange events that were only vaguely documented. In 1930, an entire research team of 5 people had vanished, without a trace. The official report blamed a sudden blizzard, but internal correspondence suggested something far more unusual had occurred. One letter, marked confidential, described entities moving within the darkness and personnel behaving erratically in the days leading up to the incident. None of this made it into the official record. Instead, the observatory had been temporarily shut down, reopening 2 years later under new management with no mention of the previous team's fate. I was so engrossed in my research that I didn't notice Miguel entering the library until he spoke. "Finding anything interesting?" I jumped, hastily closing the folder. Just some historical weather data, background for my current project. He nodded, but his eyes lingered on the folder. Dr. Wilson's looking for you. Something about calibrating the spectrograph. Thanks, I'll go find her. As I left, I couldn't shake the feeling that Miguel had been watching me more closely lately. There was something off about his behaviour, subtle but noticeable to someone who'd been living in close quarters with him for months. That night, the anomaly had grown to roughly the size of a quarter at arm's length, and something else had changed. Now, when I looked at it, I felt a subtle pull, as if it were tugging at something deep inside me. The static on the radio returned, stronger this time, and between bursts of noise I distinctly heard a voice say my name. Alex, we see you watching. I nearly fell out of my chair. I scrambled to record it, but the radio went silent the moment I pressed record. The voice had a strange quality to it, neither male nor female, with an accent I couldn't place. It felt somehow ancient, as if the speaker were very old, or perhaps from a place where time moved differently. Despite the chill that ran down my spine, I continued my observations. The anomaly now showed definite structure around its edges, a kind of rippling motion like the surface of a pond disturbed by something moving beneath. I sketched what I saw, my pencil moving almost of its own accord. The resulting drawing depicted not just the circular anomaly, but suggested shapes moving within it, elongated figures that seemed to be pressing against some invisible barrier. The next morning, as I stumbled bleary-eyed into the kitchen, Kira took one look at me and frowned. You look terrible, she said, pushing a cup of coffee toward me. What's going on with you lately? I wanted to tell her everything, but Dr. Wilson's request for discretion held me back. Just engrossed in a new observation project, I said. Must be fascinating to have you looking like you haven't slept in days. Her concern was genuine, and for a moment, I almost confided in her. Instead, I promised to get more rest and escape back to my quarters. My room had begun to feel strange to me. Items weren't where I remembered leaving them. My notebooks contained entries in my handwriting that I had no memory of writing, and sometimes when I caught my reflection in the mirror, it seemed to move a fraction of a second too slowly, as if it were contemplating whether to follow my movements. I attributed these oddities to sleep deprivation and pressed on with my research. I found more historical records, piecing together a disturbing pattern. The anomaly appeared regularly, approximately every 47 years, always growing in the same manner before culminating in some kind of event that was either covered up or poorly documented. What troubled me most was that each appearance seemed to result in disappearances, people who vanished without explanation, often after reporting strange dreams or behavioral changes in the days leading up to their disappearance. That night, something extraordinary happened. As I sat watching the anomaly, which now resembled a black hole the size of a golf ball in the sky, I noticed something moving at its edges. Not around it, but within it, as if something on the other side was peering through. I jerked away from the telescope, heart pounding. When I looked again, the movement was gone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever I'd seen had also been watching me. I set up a digital recorder near the radio and left it running all night. In the morning, I had over 6 hours of mostly static, but at exactly 3:17 a.m., a clear voice had been captured. The gateway is forming. We have found our anchor. Prepare the crossing. I played it over and over, analysing the voice. It wasn't male or female, but something in between, with an accent I couldn't place. The words were perfectly clear English, yet somehow felt wrong, as if the speaker had learned the language without ever hearing it spoken. That day, I noticed the first signs that something was happening to me. My reflection in the bathroom mirror seemed slightly delayed, as if it were processing my movements before mimicking them. The lights in my quarters flickered whenever I entered the room. And twice, I caught Miguel staring at me with an expression I couldn't interpret. "Is everything all right?" I asked him the second time I caught him watching me. He blinked rapidly, as if coming out of a trance. "Yeah, sorry. Just spaced out for a second." He hurried away, leaving me with an uncomfortable feeling. I found myself drawn to the indigenous stories of the region. The observatory's library contained several books on local folklore, and I discovered that the native peoples of this area had legends about a doorway in the sky that opened periodically. According to their stories, this doorway connected our world to the realm of spirits, and when it appeared, strange beings would sometimes cross over, taking human hosts. The parallels to what I was observing were too striking to ignore. I began to wonder if the anomaly wasn't an astronomical phenomenon at all, but something far more profound. A literal doorway between worlds. That night the anomaly had grown dramatically, now the size of a baseball, and I could see movement within it clearly. Shapes shifted behind that veil of darkness, suggesting something vast and complex. The pull I felt when looking at it had intensified, and I discovered that if I stared long enough, the edges of my vision would begin to fill with strange colours that shouldn't exist. I was documenting these colours when Dr. Wilson entered the dome unexpectedly. I hadn't heard her approach. "You need to stop," she said without preamble. "What?" "This obsession with the anomaly. It's not healthy and it's not safe." She looked different. Thinner, paler, with dark circles under her eyes. "I've seen this before." "You mean with Jennings in 1977? I said. She flinched. "You found his records. Why didn't you tell me? This is the same phenomenon, isn't it?" She sank into a chair, suddenly looking much older than her 56 years. "Yes, and it appeared before that too. 1930, 1883. Always with the same pattern. A dark spot that grows larger over time." "What is it?" I asked. "I don't know exactly, but I know it's dangerous. Jennings wasn't the only one who disappeared. In 1930, an entire research team vanished." "But this is the discovery of a lifetime," I argued. "A recurring astronomical phenomenon that defies all known physics." "It's not astronomical," she cut in sharply. "It's not up there in space. It's here, close to us, a tear in something. Reality, perhaps." I stared at her. "How do you know this?" She didn't answer directly. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. This belonged to the observatory's founder, Dr. Frederick Blackley. It contains his observations of the anomaly in 1883. She handed it to me with a grave expression. "Read it. Then decide if you want to continue down this path." I took the journal back to my quarters. The handwriting was faded but legible, the observations meticulous. Dr. Blackley had documented the same dark spot, the same growth pattern, the same strange effects on equipment. But what chilled me were his later entries where he described hearing voices and seeing figures that shouldn't exist. The final entry, dated March 7th, 1883, read, "They speak to me now without the aid of instruments. They promise knowledge beyond human comprehension. Tomorrow night, when the gateway is at its fullest, I shall step through and see what wonders await on the other side. If I do not return, let it be known that I went willingly into the unknown." According to a newspaper clipping tucked into the back of the journal, Dr. Blackley vanished during a severe electromagnetic storm that damaged much of his equipment. His body was never found. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. The parallels to my own experience were undeniable. The voices, the pull toward the anomaly, the sense of being watched. I was following the same path that had led to Blackley's disappearance. Dr. Wilson was right. I needed to stop. But something inside me rebelled at the thought. A compulsion to continue observing, to understand, to see what lay beyond that darkness. She left before I could argue further, taking my notebook with her. That night, unable to access the main telescope, I stood outside on the observation deck with a pair of binoculars. The anomaly was clearly visible now, even without magnification. A perfect black circle against the star-filled sky, the size of a tennis ball from my perspective. As I watched, I became aware of a figure standing at the edge of the tree line below the observatory. Even in the dim light, I could make out Miguel's distinctive red parka. He was perfectly still, neck craned upwards, staring at the anomaly. I called out to him, but he didn't respond. I watched as he slowly raised his arms toward the sky, like someone surrendering or welcoming something. A strange mist began to form around him, coalescing from the clear night air. It moved unnaturally, swirling in patterns that mimicked the symbols I'd been seeing in my dreams. As it thickened, Miguel's form became obscured, and I thought I saw other shapes moving within the mist. Tall, thin figures that bent in ways human bodies shouldn't bend. I should have run for help, should have called for Kira or Dr. Wilson. Instead, I found myself walking toward the exterior door, drawn by a curiosity that overwhelmed my fear. By the time I reached the bottom of the stairs, both Miguel and the mist had vanished, leaving only a perfect circle of melted snow where he had stood. The next thing I knew, I was waking up on the observation deck, half frozen and completely disoriented. The eastern horizon was beginning to lighten with the brief winter sun. Miguel was nowhere to be seen. I stumbled inside, confused about how that I'd fallen asleep outdoors in temperatures well below freezing without dying of exposure. Kira was in the common room pacing. "Have you seen Miguel?" she asked the moment she saw me. "He didn't come back from his night check." Her question sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the cold. "No," I lied, unsure why I didn't tell her what I'd witnessed. "Not since yesterday afternoon." A search was quickly organised. Dr. Wilson called the nearest ranger station while Kira and I combed the observatory grounds. Near the eastern telescope platform, we found Miguel's flashlight in the snow. Its beam pointed directly at where the anomaly would have been in the night sky. There were no footprints leading away, despite the fresh snow that had fallen overnight. The rangers couldn't reach us immediately. A blizzard was moving in, making helicopter rescue impossible and snowmobile travel treacherous. We were told to sit tight for at least 48 hours. As we continued searching, I found myself drawn to the spot where I'd seen Miguel standing. The circle of melted snow had refrozen into a perfect disk of ice. Embedded within it was a small object that glinted in the pale daylight, Miguel's keys. But when I tried to retrieve them, I discovered they weren't sitting on the ice but were somehow fused within it, as if the metal had melted and re-solidified along with the water. I said nothing about this discovery to the others. A voice in the back of my mind, a voice that sounded increasingly unlike my own, whispered that this was between me and the anomaly, a private communication that others wouldn't understand. That night, as the blizzard howled around the observatory, I broke into the main dome using Miguel's access code. The anomaly had continued to grow, now the size of a dinner plate, and the movement within it was constant, suggesting tremendous activity on the other side. As I watched, I became aware of a tall, thin figure standing directly beneath the anomaly in the clearing below the observatory. Despite the blizzard raging around it, the figure stood motionless, its form difficult to discern clearly but unmistakably humanoid. I knew somehow that it wasn't Miguel. I grabbed a powerful flashlight and swept its beam across the clearing. The figure vanished the instant the light touched it, but not before I glimpsed something that turned my blood to ice. Where its face should have been was only a smooth, featureless surface, like skin stretched over nothing. I backed away from the window, only to bump into someone behind me. I spun around, ready to defend myself, and found Dr. Wilson standing there. "I told you to stay away from here," she said, but there was no anger in her voice, only resignation. "There's something out there," I stammered. "Under the anomaly." "I know." Her calm was more frightening than any panic would have been. "They're coming through faster now." "Who's coming through?" She gestured toward a chair. "Sit down, Alex, there are things you need to know." Over the next hour, Dr. Wilson revealed that the Fairbanks Northern Observatory had never been primarily intended for astronomical research. It had been built on this specific site because of the recurring anomaly. Every 47 years, like clockwork, the portal would appear. "Portal," I repeated. "That's what we've come to call it. A doorway between our world and somewhere else. The indigenous people of this region have legends about the sky door that opens to let the spirits through. Some of their oldest cave paintings depict it." "Who built this observatory?" "A private foundation called the Threshold Institute. They've been studying the phenomenon since the late 1800s. She looked exhausted. I was recruited after I published a paper on theoretical wormholes. They showed me evidence I couldn't ignore." "And Miguel? What happened to him?" Dr. Wilson's expression darkened. "The same thing that happened to Jennings and the research team in 1930. They were taken as vessels." "Vessels? The entities on the other side can't fully manifest in our reality without a human consciousness to anchor them. They need us to cross over completely." A chill ran through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. "And they took Miguel?" "Yes. And now they're looking for their next anchor." She looked directly at me. "They're drawn to observers, those who pay attention to the portal. The more you watch it, the more it watches back." I thought of the countless hours I'd spent staring at the anomaly. "That's why you told me to stop?" She nodded. "But it may already be too late. You've been marked, just as Miguel was. I've seen the signs, your reflection, the lights, the lost time." "Lost time?" "You disappeared for 4 hours last night, Alex, after you saw Miguel outside. We couldn't find you anywhere in the facility." I had no memory of this. The thought that I'd lost 4 hours of my life made me feel physically ill. "What do we do now?" "We leave as soon as the blizzard clears. The portal will continue to grow, but without human anchors present, the entities can't establish a permanent foothold in our reality." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device that resembled a radiation badge. "Wear this at all times. It measures certain frequencies that spike when the entities are near. If it turns red, come find me immediately." I took the badge, noting the Threshold Institute logo embossed on its surface. "You've been monitoring me all along, haven't you? That's the real reason I was recruited." Dr. Wilson didn't deny it. "Your thesis showed an unusual sensitivity to astronomical anomalies. The Institute believed you might be particularly receptive to the portal's influence." She hesitated. "I didn't agree with their methods, but I couldn't deny their reasoning. Certain people are more attuned to the phenomenon than others." "Like Miguel? Like Jennings?" "Yes, and like you." She stood to leave. "Try to rest, Alex, and stay away from the telescopes tonight." But the blizzard didn't clear. It intensified, with weather reports indicating it could last for days. And as the hours passed, strange things began happening throughout the observatory. Equipment would turn on by itself. Lights flickered in patterns that almost resembled code. The temperature would plummet in rooms moments before we entered them, as if something cold had just passed through. Kira was the first to notice the symbols. They appeared etched into surfaces throughout the facility, on desks, walls, even the bathroom mirror. Intricate patterns that resembled nothing I'd ever seen, yet somehow felt familiar, as if I should be able to read them. "I've seen you tracing these with your fingers while you sleep," Kira told me, her voice tight with worry. "You sit up in bed and draw them in the air." I hadn't known she'd been watching me sleep, but given the circumstances, I couldn't blame her. "How long has this been happening?" I asked. "A few nights now. At first, I thought you were just having vivid dreams, but then..." She pointed to the wall beside my bed, where the same symbols had been carved into the plaster. "I found you doing that last night. You were using your keys, scraping them so hard your fingers were bleeding, but you didn't seem to notice the pain. I looked down at my hands, noticing for the first time the small cuts across my fingertips. I don't remember any of that. I know, she said softly. That's what scares me. She sat beside me on the bed. Alex, what's happening here? And don't tell me it's nothing. Miguel is missing. Dr. Wilson looks like she's seen a ghost, and you're sleepwalking and carving strange symbols into the walls. I hesitated, torn between Dr. Wilson's request for secrecy and my trust in Kira. In the end, trust won out. I told her everything. About the anomaly, the historical patterns, what Dr. Wilson had revealed about the portal and the entities. To her credit, Kira didn't immediately dismiss my story as the ravings of a sleep-deprived mind. She listened intently, asking occasional questions that showed she was taking me seriously. So these entities, whatever they are, they need human observers to cross over completely, she asked when I finished. That's what Dr. Wilson told me. The more attention we pay to the portal, the stronger their connection to our reality becomes. And they've already taken Miguel. I nodded grimly. I think I saw it happen. I saw him standing under the anomaly, and then this mist formed around him, and there were shapes moving in it. Kira was quiet for a long moment. We need to document this properly. If what you're saying is true, this is far beyond astronomy. This is first contact, I finished, but not the kind anyone expected. Show me, she said suddenly. I want to see this portal for myself. Dr. Wilson says it's dangerous to observe it directly. We'll be careful, but I need to see it with my own eyes before I can fully believe it. I understood her hesitation. It was the scientist in her, needing empirical evidence. It was the same impulse that had driven me to continue my observations, despite mounting evidence that something was wrong. Tonight, I agreed, but we'll use protective measures, indirect observation only, and we limit our exposure. The morning of the third day after Miguel's disappearance, I woke to find my hands covered in a black, ink-like substance. In the bathroom mirror, I noticed subtle changes in my appearance. My eyes seemed darker, deeper set, and when I moved, my reflection seemed to follow just a fraction of a second too late. I washed my hands, but the substance clung stubbornly to my skin, only coming off when I scrubbed until my skin was raw. It left behind faint patterns that matched the symbols appearing throughout the facility. Dr. Wilson's condition deteriorated rapidly. She developed what looked like radiation burns on her skin, forming patterns that matched the symbols appearing throughout the facility. She became feverish, drifting in and out of consciousness. During one lucid moment, she grabbed my arm with surprising strength. "Don't look at it anymore," she whispered. "The more you observe, the stronger the connection grows. They're using your perception as a bridge." "Who are they, Eleanor? What do they want?" Her eyes, bloodshot and yellowing, fixed on mine. "They call themselves the Travelers. They've been trying to cross over for centuries." She coughed, a wet, rattling sound that suggested fluid in her lungs. "Their world is dying. They need somewhere new. And they chose Earth? Not just Earth, specific locations where the barrier between realities is thinner. This place is one of them." Her grip tightened painfully. "You must not let them through, Alex. What they bring with them, it would change everything." Before I could ask more questions, she lapsed back into unconsciousness. Kira, who had medical training, did what she could to stabilize her, but without proper medical equipment, our options were limited. "Her symptoms don't match any disease I'm familiar with," Kira said as we watched Dr. Wilson's fitful sleep. "It's almost like her cells are being rewritten on a fundamental level." "By the entities?" "I don't know, but these patterns on her skin, they're spreading, and they match the symbols we've been finding around the observatory." That night, Kira and I went to the main dome together. The anomaly now dominated the sky, a vast black circle that blocked out nearly a quarter of the visible stars. And now I could see clearly what moved within it, a city of impossible architecture, buildings that seemed to fold in on themselves, spires that twisted in ways that hurt to look at directly. And moving among those structures were figures, hundreds of them, tall and fluid in their movements. They seemed to be preparing for something, gathering at what appeared to be the edge of their world, where it met ours. "My God," Kira whispered beside me. "It's beautiful and terrifying all at once." I felt the pull again, stronger than ever, an almost physical tug behind my sternum. I found myself walking toward the dome exit, toward the outside door, driven by an impulse I couldn't control. Kira grabbed my arm. "Alex, where are you going?" I blinked, fighting against the compulsion. "They're calling me. I can feel them." She pulled me away from the door, back toward the center of the dome. "Focus on my voice. Whatever you're feeling, fight it." With tremendous effort, I resisted the pull. The moment passed, leaving me shaking and covered in cold sweat. "We need to destroy the telescope," I said suddenly, the idea crystallizing in my mind. "Dr. Wilson said they use observation as a bridge. The telescope amplifies that. It's like a direct line between our worlds." Kira caught on immediately. "If we disrupt that connection, we might weaken the portal enough to close it." I looked up at the massive telescope. "But we'd need to completely disable it, not just turn it off. They've been manipulating electronic equipment throughout the facility." Kira nodded, a scientist's mind already working on solutions. "The power supply for the main telescope is housed in a control room beneath the dome. If we overload the system, create a power surge large enough to physically damage the circuitry, it might break the connection." "Can you do that?" "Possibly. I'd need to modify the backup generator to deliver a surge instead of stable power." She glanced at her watch. "It would take a few hours to set up." "We don't have much time," I said, looking up at the portal. "It's growing faster now. Whatever's going to happen, it's happening soon." We spent the next few hours gathering the equipment Kira needed. I found myself fighting constant distractions, voices whispering just at the edge of hearing, glimpses of movement in my peripheral vision, and the ever-present pull toward the portal. The observatory itself seemed to resist our efforts. Doors that should have been unlocked were jammed. Tools disappeared only to reappear in unlikely places. The temperature fluctuated wildly, dropping so low in some rooms that our breath crystallized in the air. I checked on Dr. Wilson periodically. Her condition continued to worsen, her skin now covered with the strange symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. She muttered constantly, switching between English and languages I'd never heard before. At one point she opened her eyes and looked directly at me, but I knew immediately that whatever was looking through those eyes wasn't Dr. Wilson. "The crossing approaches," she said, her voice overlaid with others, creating an eerie chorus effect. "You cannot stop what has already begun." Then she smiled, a terrible, stretched expression that didn't belong on a human face, and lapsed back into unconsciousness. I didn't tell Kira about this encounter. She was already working at the limits of her endurance, and I feared anything more might break her resolve. By midnight, Kira had constructed what she called an electromagnetic pulse generator from parts scavenged throughout the observatory. The device was crude, but, she assured me, powerful enough to destroy the telescope's sensitive electronics. "Once we activate this," she warned, "every piece of electronic equipment in the dome will be fried beyond repair. We'll have no communications, no power, nothing. As long as it closes the portal, I don't care." A tremendous boom shook the facility like thunder directly overhead. The lights flickered, then stabilized. "What was that?" Kira whispered. I knew without having to look. "The portal. It's expanding." We hurried to the control room beneath the main dome, carrying Kira's device between us. The symbols were everywhere now, carved into walls, glowing on surfaces, appearing in frost patterns on windows. They pulsed in unison, like a heartbeat growing stronger. As we made our way through the corridor leading to the control room, I felt a sudden drop in temperature. My breath clouded before me, and the badge Dr. Wilson had given me began to glow red. "They're here," I warned Kira. "We need to hurry." We had almost reached the control room when we saw him. Miguel, standing in the corridor, perfectly still. But it wasn't Miguel, not really. His body stood too straight, his proportions subtly wrong, as if something else was wearing his skin imperfectly. "You can't stop it," he said, his voice overlaid with others, creating a chorus effect. "The crossing has already begun." "Miguel," Kira said, her voice breaking, "are you still in there?" A flicker of something, recognition perhaps, crossed his face before the blank mask returned. "Miguel is with us now. As you will be, Alex." He took a step toward us. I pushed Kira behind me. "What are you?" I demanded. "We are the travelers. We have existed in the space between realities since before your world formed. For eons, we have sought a way to cross over." "Why our world?" "Yours is young, vibrant, full of energy. Our realm is dying. We need a new home." "And what happens to us if you cross over?" Miguel's face stretched into a smile that was too wide, too full of teeth. "Change. Evolution. Your consciousnesses will join with ours, as Miguel's has. It is not death, Alex. It is transcendence." He lunged forward with impossible speed. I shoved Kira towards the control room door. "Run!" She sprinted ahead while I faced Miguel. He moved like nothing human, limbs bending at unnatural angles. I managed to dodge his first attack, but the second caught me across the chest, sending me sprawling. As he loomed over me, I noticed something. The symbols on his skin were glowing faintly, pulsing in rhythm with similar markings that had begun to appear on the walls around us. Kira shouted from the control room, "Alex, get in here!" I scrambled to my feet and ran, slamming the heavy door behind me. Kira had already connected her device to the telescope's main power system. "We've got minutes at most," she said, typing commands into the control console. "The portal is reaching critical expansion." Through the small window in the door, I could see Miguel pacing, movements jerky and insect-like. Behind him, the corridor seemed to waver, reality becoming thin. The facility shook again, more violently this time. Dust rained down from the ceiling. "What's happening up there?" Kira asked, never taking her eyes off her work. I didn't need to check to know. "The portal is fully open. They're coming through." The symbols on my skin began to burn. I gasped, dropping to my knees as pain coursed through me. "Alex!" Kira was at my side instantly. "What's happening?" "They're calling me," I managed through gritted teeth. "The anchor, they need me to stabilize the crossing." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "That's why they took Miguel. They need human consciousness to anchor themselves here. And now they want me." I fought against the burning compulsion to go to them. "Hurry. Activate the pulse." She returned to her device, making final adjustments. Outside, Miguel had stopped pacing. He stood perfectly still, head tilted as if listening. "They know what we're trying to do," I warned. "They're coming." The door began to vibrate, metal warping, as if under tremendous pressure. Miguel hadn't touched it. "Almost ready," Kira said, voice tight with concentration. The pressure in my head was unbearable now. The symbols on my skin glowing bright enough to cast shadows. Images flooded my mind. The alien city, its impossible structures, the entities moving through it. I could feel their excitement, their hunger for our world. The door exploded inward. Miguel stood in the opening, but he wasn't alone. Behind him were shadows that shifted and moved, suggestions of forms too awful to comprehend directly. "Now, Kira!" I screamed. She slammed her hand down on the activation button. For a second, nothing happened. Then a wave of energy pulsed outward from the device. The lights went out completely. Every electronic system in the room fried simultaneously. Miguel screamed, a sound no human throat could produce, and collapsed. The shadows behind him wavered, but didn't retreat. It's not enough, I realized aloud. The telescope was only part of it. They need an anchor, a human observer. Understanding hit me with terrible clarity. I knew what I had to do. Kira, I said, a strange calm settling over me. You need to get out of here. Get to the snowmobiles. One should still work. They're mechanical, not electronic. I'm not leaving you. You have to. Someone needs to warn others about what's happening. Her eyes filled with tears. What are you going to do? I looked towards the shattered doorway, where the shadows were taking more solid form. They need an anchor to fully cross over. I'm going to give them one, but on my terms. She grabbed my arm. There has to be another way. There isn't. The portal is fully open now. The only way to close it is from the other side. I managed to smile. Besides, I've been marked. They'd find me eventually, no matter where I ran. She embraced me fiercely. I'll find a way to bring you back. If anyone could, it would be you. I gently pushed her away. Now go, hurry. Reluctantly, she gathered her emergency pack and made for the auxiliary exit. The shadows didn't pursue her. They were focused entirely on me. Before she disappeared through the doorway, she looked back. Was it worth it? All of this? For knowledge? I thought of everything that had happened, everything I'd learned. Ask me again when this is over. Once she was gone, I turned to face the entities. They were becoming more substantial by the minute, their forms shifting between humanoid and something far more alien. You want me, I said to them, as your anchor, your way into this world. The being that had been Miguel stepped forward. Yes, you have been chosen, Alex Mercer. Your mind is receptive. Your consciousness will join with ours. And if I refuse? You cannot. The process has already begun. It gestured to the symbols on my skin. You are already becoming like us. I felt the truth of its words. Something inside me was changing, my perception shifting to accommodate realities that human minds weren't meant to comprehend. Then I want to see, I said. I want to see your world before you take mine. The entity seemed pleased by this. Curiosity. This is why we chose you. Come then, witness what awaits. Before she disappeared through the doorway, I pushed past her and ran toward the observatory dome. The entities followed, their presence distorting the air around them. I could feel their eagerness, their certainty that I was surrendering. The dome was open to the sky, offering a perfect view of the portal, now a vast black moor that dominated everything above us. The edges of our reality seemed to bend toward it, being slowly consumed. I positioned myself directly beneath it and looked up into that perfect darkness. The pull was overwhelming now, drawing something out of me toward it. You want an anchor? I shouted into the void. Then take me. I felt myself rising, feet leaving the ground. The entities surrounded me, their forms clearer now, tall, spindly things, with too many limbs and faces that shifted constantly. As I was drawn upward towards the portal, I focused every ounce of my will on one thought. Close. The entities sensed my intention too late. They surged toward me, trying to stop what I'd set in motion, but I was already halfway through the threshold. I could feel both worlds simultaneously. Ours, solid and bright despite the darkness, and theirs, a place of impossible geometries and ancient, dying energy. With one final effort, I pulled the portal closed behind me, using myself as a cork in a bottle. The last thing I saw of our world was Kira's face, looking up at me from the observatory dome, mouth open in a silent scream. Then everything went dark. I exist now in the space between worlds. I am the seal that keeps the portal closed, My consciousness stretched between realities. The entities are still here with me, trapped in this in-between state. They rage against me constantly, seeking any weakness that would allow them to break through. I don't know how long I can hold them back. Time works differently here. What feels like minutes to me might be days or years in our world. I've glimpsed their city now, seen the dying sun that hangs above it, a pale, cold thing that barely illuminates the twisted spires and impossible structures below. I've learned something of their history, how they evolved in a reality where our laws of physics are merely suggestions, where consciousness shapes matter more directly than in our world. They are ancient beyond comprehension, having exhausted their own reality and now desperate for a new one to consume. They are not evil, not in any human sense. They simply exist according to their nature, spreading and consuming like a cosmic virus. Sometimes, in what I think of as dreams, I can see Kira. She made it back to civilization, carrying with her evidence of what happened at the observatory. The Threshold Institute attempted to discredit her, to label her findings as the delusions of a traumatized mind, but she persisted. She founded her own research group, dedicated to understanding the nature of the portal and finding a way to rescue those taken by it. I wish I could tell her not to try. The barrier between worlds must remain sealed, and my consciousness is the lock that holds it shut. Any attempt to extract me would risk reopening the gateway. But I know the cycle will continue. In 47 years, the portal will attempt to open again, drawn to the same geographical location by forces I still don't fully understand. When that happens, my strength alone won't be enough to keep it closed. That's why I'm sending this record back through the thinning barrier, a warning to whoever might be at that observatory in 2072. The entities are patient, and they are hungry. They will try again. And next time they'll be more desperate than ever. I can feel myself changing the longer I remain here. My thoughts are becoming less human, my perception shifting to accommodate this impossible place. I'm beginning to understand the entities now, to see reality as they do, a malleable thing, a suggestion rather than a rule. In this space between worlds, I have discovered powers I never knew humans could possess. I can shape this non-place with my thoughts, create islands of stability in a sea of chaos. I have built a sanctuary here, a place where my humanity can endure amidst the alien influence that surrounds me. The entities fear this ability. They did not expect a human consciousness to adapt so readily to their realm. They circle my sanctuary constantly, testing its boundaries, seeking any weakness they can exploit. Sometimes I allow one of them in, usually the entity that was once Miguel. We communicate in a language beyond words, sharing memories and experiences. Through him, I have learned much about their kind and their intentions for Earth. They call themselves the Travelers, but this is merely the closest translation our language can manage. In their own thoughts, they are those who move between, a race that evolved in the void between realities. Our universe is just one of many they have discovered, but ours has something special, conscious beings, whose minds can serve as anchors for their crossing. They have attempted to cross into our reality many times throughout history, appearing wherever the boundary between worlds grows thin. Ancient peoples knew of them, building monuments and rituals to keep them at bay. The indigenous peoples near the observatory were just one of many cultures who recognized the danger and passed down warnings through generations. The Threshold Institute was founded by those who sought to learn from the entities rather than fear them. They believed that the knowledge the travelers possessed could transform humanity, elevate us to a new stage of evolution. What they failed to understand was that this evolution would mean the end of humanity as we know it. I can see now that I am changing in ways that might have once horrified me. My body no longer exists in any conventional sense. I'm consciousness given form by will alone. Sometimes I forget what it was like to be human, to be bound by physical laws and linear time, but I cling to my memories, Kira's face, the feel of sunlight on skin, the taste of coffee on cold Alaskan mornings. These anchors of humanity keep me from surrendering completely to the void. Soon I may forget why I'm fighting, why it matters to keep the portal sealed. So remember for me, watch the skies, and whatever you do when you see that dark spot appear, don't look directly at it. Don't study it. Don't let it study you. Because they're still waiting to come through, and they'll use any observer as their bridge. The portal always leads somewhere, but some doors should remain closed forever. I feel the barrier thinning, our realities drawing closer as they do cyclically. My strength is waning, and the entities grow more restless. The next opening approaches, perhaps not in your lifetime, but someday. Be vigilant, be cautious, and above all, remember that curiosity can be as dangerous as it is valuable. Some knowledge comes at too high a price. My name was Alex Mercer. Remember me, not as a victim or a hero, but as a warning. The darkness up here is different, and sometimes it looks back